It helps if I turn off my microphone. I got it. A coworker just ran in here. He's like, your microphone's off. Thank you. Already. All right. Well, that is the appropriate start, I suppose. What I was saying was, you know what's better than a Monday morning? A Monday morning with me, because that means you get to deal with some kind of severe and or hazardous weather, and no audio to start too. So just another lovely day here in God's country, as a wise philosopher once said. We are going to be looking at, unfortunately, despite the very nice weather that we've had out there the last couple of days and the very nice weather we're going to have today, we are looking at a fairly significant change in the weather pattern, and we're going to be looking at a fairly significant flash flood risk. It looks like it's going to be setting up across the region beginning tomorrow, but continuing Wednesday into Thursday as well. And in addition to the flood threat, we're also going to be looking at a slight risk of severe weather as well. We've got a warm front that's going to be working through the area today, and that is going to set the stage for this potential flood situation going into tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday. This is actually one of the more significant flash flood setups that we've seen across the region in quite a while. We were talking actually earlier out here in our operations area how it seems like May is always a trouble month for us when it comes to flooding outside of tropical season, and that does look like it's going to be the case this week. As always, this is a live interactive briefing, so if you have any questions as you go through our briefing here, feel free to post them in our comment section, and I'll be happy to answer them just as soon as we wrap up our briefing. Cookie Death says it's flood season. Yeah, it kind of is. If there was a flood season prior to hurricane season, this would be it. It seems like. So let's go ahead and jump into it here. Again, we've got a developing area of low pressure that's going to form on this warm front. We're going to have a warm front actually lift out of the Gulf this afternoon. You're going to notice it because we're going to be looking at the winds are going to shift out of the south, and those dew points and that humidity is going to come up. We've had some very nice, very low humidity here the last couple of days. That's a little bit unusual for May. Usually we're starting to feel a little bit more summer-like out there, but very nice conditions the last couple of days. All of that warm, humid air, though, has been sitting kind of out over the Gulf of Mexico. That's going to lift back north into the area. And then we're going to have an area of low pressure develop kind of right along that warm front, and it's going to ride right along it very slowly for the next couple of days. That's what's going to bring us all of the rain starting as early as tomorrow morning and continuing, it looks like, tomorrow night into Wednesday night into Thursday morning, possibly even into Thursday afternoon before it all finally gets out of here. Rainfall totals over the 3-day period, kind of Tuesday morning through Thursday morning, we're looking at between about 4 and 8 inches, with some areas potentially seeing up to a foot of rain across the area. Now, not everybody is going to see a foot of rain, but it wouldn't surprise me if we do see a few areas see up to a foot of rain. In addition to the flood threat, we are looking at a low-end severe weather threat as well. We're going to talk about that here in just a second. Let's talk real quickly just about what's going on here, though. We've got that warm front that I mentioned. That's going to lift up to the north by tomorrow, it's going to be starting to move inland by this afternoon into this evening, but moving well inland by tonight into tomorrow morning. Then we'll see this area of low pressure develop right along the leading edge of that, and that is going to slowly, very painfully slowly almost, begin to work its way from west to east across East Texas into Louisiana. All of this moisture that's kind of lifting up out of the Gulf associated with this warm front, that low is going to run right into it, and that's going to cause widespread showers and thunderstorms. And because there's going to be so much moisture in the atmosphere, those storms are going to be capable of producing very heavy rainfall, that torrential rainfall where we may see several inches of rain fall over just a course of an hour or two. You know, even when we're not talking about significant rainfall totals, just with rainfall rates that high, that's enough to cause street flooding. When you're talking about rainfall rates of 3-4 inches an hour, that's more than can run off. That's more than any kind of, we talk about the drainage systems here in Lake Charles and in most major cities being an issue. But when you're talking about rainfall rates that high, that's too much for any kind of drainage system to handle. Even the best drainage systems are not going to be able to handle that kind of water. So that's what we're going to be looking at on the one hand, and then we're also going to be looking at significant rainfall accumulation on the other that could potentially lead to more widespread, significant flooding. That's the kind of flooding that could potentially get into homes, businesses, and then it'll eventually run off into area rivers. We see what the rainfall totals that we're expecting, we could be looking at some significant river flooding as well, not just this week, but probably for the next couple of weeks as well. Going into Wednesday morning, you can see this area of low pressure still kind of in place. By Thursday morning, it's just now kind of getting into western Louisiana. It's not going to get out of here, it looks like, until sometime Thursday evening. So pretty much 3 solid days almost of potentially heavy rainfall across the region. As a result, we do have a flash flood watch that was issued here this morning. This is going to be in effect from Tuesday afternoon. It's going to start raining Tuesday morning, but the threat for the flooding really increases Tuesday afternoon and goes through Thursday evening. That's pretty much for the entire area, all of southeast Texas and all of southwest, central, and south central Louisiana in that flood watch through Thursday evening. Let's take a look here. This is the excessive rainfall outlook. This is essentially the probabilities of seeing flash flooding across a region. I'm going to go ahead and make this full screen here so we can take a little bit closer look at it here. The graphic there on the left, that is showing the probabilities of seeing flash flooding across the region. Those areas highlighted in red, which essentially generally runs along and north of the I-10 corridor, means there's at least a 40% of flash flooding, between about a 40 to 69% chance officially of seeing flash flooding within 25 miles of a location, essentially along and north of I-10. The overall flood risk is slightly lower south of I-10 to the coast, but still looking at roughly between about a 15 to 40% chance of flash flooding, even all the way down to the coastline with this flood event. Now, that's just for Tuesday into Tuesday night. Heading into Wednesday, you can see kind of a similar pattern. The risk is a little bit lower because we're not expecting quite as widespread of rain overall, but we're still looking at roughly about a 15 to 40% chance of flooding Wednesday into Wednesday night. And then going into Thursday, we'll continue to see that overall flood risk. Those exact probabilities are not out yet. This is a look at the forecast rainfall totals. Let me go ahead and make this full screen again for you here so we can take a little bit closer look at it together. So you can see roughly about anywhere between about 3 to as much as 8 inches of rain. We're looking at, I've been saying, anywhere between 4 to 8 inches of rain expected across the region. Right now, you can see the highest bullseye is kind of over across the Lafayette area. Parts of South Central Louisiana, but don't focus on that specifically. It's extremely difficult, if not impossible, to determine exactly what areas are going to see the highest overall rainfall totals in advance. But you can kind of get the idea that we're looking at anywhere between about 4 to 8 inches of rain. And I think some areas, there are some computer models indicating up to a foot of rain, if not possibly a little bit more than that. Sometimes we struggle to put the upper limit on these kind of events, because if we wind up in a situation where very heavy rainfall is training over the same area, we can very easily get up to that 12, maybe even 15 inches of rain in 1 or 2 spots. So, bottom line is, regardless of exactly how much a particular area gets, this is going to be a fairly significant flash flood risk across the area here Tuesday through Thursday. Go ahead and jump forward here. There it is. Okay, I'm going to make this full screen again because it's easier just to see it that way. So this is a look at the timing with regards to the probabilities of precipitation. You can see really the higher rainfall probabilities begin as early as about 9 a.m. Tuesday. This is for our Louisiana cities. I'll show our Southeast Texas cities here in just a second. But by about 9 a.m. Tuesday, we're looking at very high rain chances already, 50 to 75% chance. And it continues pretty consistently. We're looking at 70 to 90% chance pretty much all the way through the rest of the day. Tuesday night, all day Wednesday night, maybe a little bit lower Wednesday night, 40 to 60%. And then going into Thursday, really not getting that activity out of here until sometime, it looks like Thursday afternoon. We're only looking about a 40 to 50% chance. And finally having it all out of here, it looks like by late Thursday evening. So it's not going to be a situation where we're going to have any kind of long break. This is going to be a pretty solid 2 to 3 day period of heavy rainfall. There'll be individual breaks kind of in individual areas, but this is something that we're going to be dealing with potentially heavy rainfall across the entire region for darn near 3 solid days. Let me take a look at our Southeast Texas cities there. You can see pretty much the same thing. Maybe beginning a little bit even earlier Tuesday morning. We're looking at, see, we still got about 40 to 50% chance of rain as early as 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. continuing pretty solidly through the day. You can see the 90 to 100% chance between about 3 p.m. and midnight. That's going to be your most widespread time frame. But still looking at very high rain chances all the way through Wednesday night, through Thursday. It is going to come to an end, I think, a little bit earlier Thursday. This whole system's moving from west to east, so it should end a little bit earlier. Southeast Texas, just like it's going to begin a little bit earlier. So I think by Thursday afternoon, we'll have most of the activity out of there for Southeast Texas. So the weekend's not looking too bad. Excuse me. But we are looking at pretty good rain chances all the way through at least Thursday afternoon at this point. I mentioned that we are also looking at a risk for severe weather. We do have a slight risk currently. This is mainly going to be Southeast Texas and Western Louisiana, at least at this point. This may be extended a little bit further to the east as we go into tomorrow, but you can see Southeast Texas, Western Louisiana currently in that category 2 out of 5, that slight risk. And then South Central Louisiana and areas essentially east of Lake Charles in that category 1 out of 5, or that marginal risk. Right now, it looks like damaging winds and large hail are going to be the biggest overall threat, although there is a low-end risk for tornadoes as well, but it is fairly low. Let's talk specifics here as far as each individual hazard. So we're going to start with damaging winds here. You can see we're looking at roughly about a 15 to 30% chance of seeing 60 mile per hour or greater winds across Southeast Texas and Western Louisiana. So that's Tyler, Jasper, Newton, Hardin, Jefferson counties, as well as Orange County, and Vernon, Beauregard, and Calcasieu parishes for that 15 to 30% chance. East of there, you can see the areas highlighted in brown. That's roughly about a 5 to 15% chance of seeing those 60 mile an hour or greater winds. So Cameron, Jeff Davis, Vermilion, Acadia, Lafayette, St. Martin, Iberia, St. Mary, Allen, Evangeline, St. Landry, Rapides, and Avoyelles. See, I can read them off. Those are the areas going to be looking at slightly lower overall risk, but there will still be a risk of damaging winds going into Tuesday. For large hail, it's going to be following a very similar path there. Roughly about a 15 to 30% chance of seeing that large, that's quarter-size hail across Tyler, Jasper, Newton, Hardin, Jefferson, and Orange, as well as Vernon, Beauregard, and Calcasieu, and then about a 5 to 15% chance of quarter-size hail or larger across the remainder of the region. I'm not going to read them off again. You can see your parish listed there for the areas highlighted in brown, that 5 to 15% chance of seeing quarter-size hail. As far as tornado risks go, this is the probability of seeing a tornado. You can see the highest risk, roughly about a 5 to 9% chance. That's in the areas highlighted in brown. So that's going to be Tyler, northern Jasper, northern Newton, and most of Vernon Parish. And then the rest of the region in a 2 to 4% chance of seeing a tornado. So that's a lower overall risk. Again, the risk of tornado lower than we've seen in recent weeks, but it is non-zero. So we're looking at about a 2 to 4% chance across most of the area of seeing a tornado within 25 miles of a location. Now, the good news is that this is mainly going to be just on Tuesday. Once the atmosphere kind of gets really worked over really well, we're not going to see a significant severe weather threat Wednesday into Thursday. We're going to switch over to more of an exclusive flash flood situation. What happens is we get all these storms Tuesday, they blow up, we get this heavy rain, potential severe weather. The atmosphere kind of loses a little bit of that energy. And also we've got a lot more cloud cover now in place. So we're not going to be looking at temperatures rising as much Wednesday. There's not going to be quite as much energy in place. So the overall risk for severe weather is going to decrease going Wednesday into Thursday. But the flash flood risk is going to remain in place. So the overall severe weather threat is mainly going to be Tuesday, possibly into Tuesday evening, but by Wednesday, that overall severe weather threat should diminish and won't be really any kind of appreciable amount of severe weather. Taking a look at the kind of the 5-day forecast here going through the week, obviously very high rain chances Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. If you haven't gotten the take-home message yet, it's going to rain this week. By Friday, the rain chances come down. We're only looking about a 10 to 30% chance. The good news is with the rain kind of in place, it is going to keep the temperatures fairly moderate. We're going to be looking at upper 70s to lower 80s, so it's not going to get too oppressive at least. So that's the one silver lining, I suppose. Going to be a very, very wet week. Now, the weekend is looking better. I didn't put it on here being that we're just coming out of this last weekend, but the weekend is actually looking fairly decent, at least as of right now. The models have been kind of flip-flopping back and forth a little bit, but it is looking much drier heading into the weekend and not too hot either. So by next weekend, we should get most of this activity out of here and I think we'll be in better shape from a weather perspective by that point. One more thing I wanted to mention here, and let me throw this up here. It's kind of ironic we're talking about this flash flood threat. We have some scheduled maintenance for our radars, both the Lake Charles radar and the Fort Johnson radar, that have to take place beginning, I think the Lake Charles one's actually beginning this afternoon, and the Fort Johnson one is going to begin late tomorrow into Wednesday. Apparently these cannot be rescheduled because there is what they're calling a critical repair that has to be made to essentially keep the radars from falling off and falling on top of us, which I'm much appreciative of them coming out to do that. The downside is these radars are going to both be down for 36 hours. Now, they're not going to be down at the same time, so we'll be able to use one or the other for this event. But the Lake Charles radar is going to go down, I think, this afternoon, and it's going to be down for 36 hours through, I believe, sometime Wednesday. Is that on here? Yeah, so it's essentially going to be going down later on this morning, actually, and be down through tomorrow. Then it'll come back up tomorrow afternoon. The Fort Johnson radar will then go down tomorrow afternoon into probably as late as early Thursday. So we're going to be kind of swapping radars here. We're only going to have access to one at a time, which is not necessarily that's not going to be a major problem because both radars can see the entire region. But just kind of keep that in mind if you're looking from one radar to the other as this trying to figure out what's going on here the next few days, that one of these radars may be out of commission. The Lake Charles one's going to be out to start, and then the Fort Johnson one is going to be out Wednesday into Thursday. Again, this is not something apparently that can be postponed because apparently there's a risk of the radar just, falling off the giant pedestal it's sitting on, and I'd rather not be underneath it when it does so. So something to kind of keep in mind with that. It is kind of funny that, of course, it's going to have to be repaired right when we're going to be dealing with a potential flooding situation, but such is life. So that's what we have here this morning from you from the National Weather Service. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in our comment section. I'll be happy to answer them here over the next few minutes. Let me go ahead and back up here and see if we do have any questions. Rhonda asked earlier, do we have to worry about tornadoes? I did talk about we do have a risk of tornadoes on Tuesday. It's a fairly low risk. Let me see if I can pull that back up here. Back up. There we go. Okay, so go over there. So essentially, depending on where you are, most of the region is looking at about a 2 to 4% chance of seeing a tornado. If you're across Tyler, northern Jasper, northern Newton, or counties, or Vernon Parish, you're looking at a slightly higher risk, roughly about a 5 to 10% chance. Pixie Dust says the weather is amazeballs this morning. I concur. I actually went outside a few minutes ago, and it is indeed amazeballs. So enjoy it. Most of the day is going to be okay. Again, that warm front's going to kind of lift off to the north by this afternoon, so the humidity is going to come up. The winds are going to pick up out of the south a little bit, but it's still going to be a fairly nice day. We'll see more clouds this afternoon, but definitely all in all, not going to be too bad of a day, all things considered. Tomorrow is going to be a lot worse. Cookie Death says they can already smell the flash flood emergencies. We were taking some friendly wagers earlier on how many flash flood emergencies we were expecting to need tomorrow. It's been a long time since this office has issued a flash flood emergency. Hopefully we won't need that. For those of you who are not familiar, a flash flood emergency is issued essentially when high water rescues are ongoing or expected. So hopefully we won't need that. Stu Jazz has the system maintenance been pushed back due to the incoming weather. If you're talking about the radar maintenance, no, that we just talked about just now, those unfortunately cannot be pushed back because they're considered critical repairs that have to be made. Let's see. Phyllis says she thinks it's a very poor and irresponsible decision for management to decide on outages this week. They can always reschedule. Well, again, when we're talking about the risk being the radar falling off, essentially the radar sits on top of what's called a pedestal. So if you think of the radar, it's actually a big radar dish, and then it sits on a thing that turns. Apparently, there's a critical potential failure there where the radar dish will literally fall off the thing, and then it becomes a much more major issue. So I understand your concern. I understand how frustrating it is. We're frustrated ourselves with it, but the alternative risk is not worth it. So we have to make those repairs. Phyllis asks, is the Fort Johnson one as good as the Lake Charles one? Yeah, they're exactly the same. They're the same radar, the WSR 88D. They're just in different locations. So they both have the same capabilities and can do the exact same thing. And we're fortunate that we have two radars in our area because they're capable of overlapping. So the Fort Johnson one can see what's going on in Lake Charles. It can see what's going on in Lafayette. The radar beam is a little bit higher because the radar, it shoots out and the radar beam goes up at an angle. So it's a little bit higher. So we're not sampling quite as low in the storm, but we can still see what's going on, especially from a flash flood perspective. So we're fortunate that we have two because a lot of areas don't. Phyllis says lots of things go wrong during repairs. They should do one this week and one the next week. Well, they're not going to take the other radar down until the first one is back up. So if there is something that delays one, then they'll push the other one back because I think it's only one team that's going around making the repairs. So until they finish one, they can't go move on to the next one. So there's not going to be a situation. I'm not going to say there's not going to be a situation because there is a possibility the other one could have an unforeseen problem. But there's not going to be a planned outage of both radars at the same time. Jason asks, is flooding on the Sabine River? If the forecast that we're looking at, the one behind me here, where we're looking at 4 to 8 inches, verifies, then yes, there will be flooding on the Sabine River. In fact, I think most of the Sabine, we were looking at some of the forecasts for that earlier, most of the Sabine will go into some level of flood stage if this forecast turns out to be true. Jason asks, is the flooding on the Sabine River to be expected like the one of May of 2016? I can't tell you that for sure. It's just going to depend on exactly how much rain falls in that basin. But we are pretty confident that there's going to be some level of flooding along the Sabine. Exactly how much, how high the river winds up getting, that remains to be seen. That's going to depend on exactly how much rain falls. Predicting exactly, like we were talking about a little while ago, predicting exactly where that potential 12 inches or even more so is going to fall, that's just beyond the scope of meteorology. We're pretty confident that it's likely to happen somewhere in the area, but exactly where we can't say. If that 12 inches winds up falling over in Lafayette instead of in the Sabine River Basin, then you're not going to see nearly as much flooding. If it winds up a little bit further to the west and it falls somewhere north of Orange, then you've got a much more significant problem along the Sabine. Unfortunately, we can't say with certainty exactly where that rain's going to fall. So we can't say with certainty exactly how high that river's going to get until we see where that rain falls. All right, see why it says KATC has a radar. KATC does have a radar. Their radar, though, is different than the ones that the Weather Service uses. It's not nearly as powerful, and it only shoots a beam out at one angle. The advantage that the Weather Service radars has is that the Weather Service can actually move. It moves up and down in elevation, so we get more beam angles than the ones at KATC and the other weather stations. That's not to say that theirs isn't good. It works. It definitely does provide good coverage for that area. But the Weather Service radars are much stronger, and they can shoot many more beams at different elevation angles. But for that area, it is definitely a valuable tool. All right, not seeing any more questions at the moment. Wait, a couple just came in. Never mind. Michael asked, Donald, will you be emailing slides to OEP and industry? Those should have already gone out this morning. I sent that out, I think, a little after 6 o'clock this morning. So if you didn't get it, let me know. Shoot me an email. But those should have gone out, so you should have gotten those. Elijah asks, what help do you get from AI to build up prediction models? Right now, using AI in forecasting is still kind of in its infancy. It's experimental stage. So at the moment, on an operational level, so for what you see behind me, none. But there is experiments going on to engage AI and implement AI in the forecasting process. But that's still kind of at that experimental phase. It's not something we use operationally yet. And Yancy asks, how about the tornadoes? Let me go ahead and pull the tornado graphic back up here. So make this full screen. So what you're looking at, this is the probability of seeing a tornado across the region. Again, this is for tomorrow. We're looking at a 5 to 10% chance of a tornado across Tyler County, northern Jasper County, northern Newton County, and Vernon Parish. And then the rest of the region, the areas highlighted in green, you can see them kind of listed there. Let me turn your question off so you can see the rest of them. You're looking at a 2 to 4% chance of seeing a tornado within 25 miles of any given location in those parishes and counties. So the overall, what that essentially means, to put that in context, the risk of a tornado is very low, but it's not zero. So that's going to be tomorrow. Now, as we go into Wednesday and Thursday, I don't think there's going to be any significant tornado risk or any significant severe weather risk to speak of Wednesday or Thursday. This is all going to be on Tuesday. O'Shea says, do you believe there's the potential for school closures? Calcasieu. I would say potential. I don't know that, again, that's out of my hands. That's up to the local school boards. Some of them may be watching with us here this morning, but they will be briefed separately. Actually, later on today, there's a briefing with them scheduled for noon. So they'll get information and they'll make those decisions. I got a hard enough time forecasting the weather. I don't want to forecast what the school board officials are or not going to do. Is there potential? Yes. Is it going to happen? Who's to say? Chris asks, what time will it start Tuesday around Sunset, Louisiana? We're going to be looking at it beginning during the morning hours. So let me see if I can pull up I'll make this full screen again for you too. So essentially, we're going to be looking at it beginning Tuesday morning. You can see by about 9 a.m., we're looking at a roughly 60 to 70% chance of rain. And that continues pretty consistently all the way through the rest of the day Tuesday, all day Wednesday, and at least most of the morning Thursday before we finally start to see those probabilities come down a little bit by Thursday afternoon into Thursday evening. But we expect showers and thunderstorms to begin across the region by a little after sunrise tomorrow morning. So by about 9 a.m. tomorrow. All right. Anybody got any more questions? I'm at the bottom of my question list here. I got a couple more minutes. Then I got to run away, because I've been here all night on shift. So I got to go home and go to sleep. Let's see. Chris says, thank you, brother. Thank you, Chris. Any more questions? Speak now or forever go away. Okay, maybe not forever, but for now. All right, not seeing any more. So everybody's happy. Everybody knows what's happening. Nobody can come back and say that they were unprepared or unwarned or hit without warning or all of that stuff that you hear after devastation happens. You have been told. Mark says, not commenting on school board decisions. That's a smart man. Yeah, I've lived and learned too. We've been through this before. All right, we're going to go ahead and wrap up, I think, then. If you have a question that I missed for some reason, or you think of it, if you're viewing this as a recording, feel free to send us a direct message on Facebook. You can also email me. My email is on your screen there. Like I said, I'm about to head out for the day, but I can get back with you later on this evening or tonight. Or we do have forecasters here. They'll be here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We've been dealing with the staffing issues recently, but we are still here. So we'll be happy to answer your questions that way. You can send us a message on X. You can send us a message on Instagram. You can send us a message on Facebook. You can email me if you'd like. You can still give us a call. I think my phone number is on the screen there. Is it? Yeah, there it is down there in the corner. Area code 337-477-5285. Those phone numbers, those phone lines are now only available 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. So call us during the day, because apparently weather doesn't happen at night. Don't get me started on that. Just don't. But we are available by phone if you need us as well. We will try to do another one of these briefings tomorrow morning to give you an update on everything that's going on. By that point, we'll probably already have some showers beginning across the area, but we should have a better update on exact rainfall totals and kind of how this is going to evolve. So we'll plan to do another one of these tomorrow morning, probably around the same time, 7:30-ish. Tomorrow morning. In the meantime, everyone have a wonderful rest of your day. Get out and enjoy it if you can. It's going to be one more beautiful day. And this may be the last day for the really nice temperatures and lower humidity until maybe sometime in mid-October. So definitely get out there and enjoy it if you can. If not, if you're working during the day today, maybe this afternoon, this evening, it still won't be too bad. But get it while you can, because there ain't going to be much getting in much more. Soon it's going to be 90 and hot and humid and nasty. And then we got to start talking about that H word season and all of that. So, yeah, enjoy the weather while you can. And do make plans to be prepared for potential flash flooding tomorrow. Have a wonderful rest of your day. We'll talk to you again tomorrow morning.